So I really, really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you, Gordon Brown, in our approach to the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and our whole theme is how to make the world better. So your book, Seven Ways to Change the World, has been an inspiration. And I really had three questions in the time we have together. What can faith and should faith communities contribute? Where do you find the hope? And you focus on cooperation, international. I'm also thinking between faiths, and yet we're becoming somehow more insular. So how can we turn this round to work together? Those were the things I wanted to pick your brains about, if that's okay.
These are big questions. Let me first of all thank you for the work that you do both locally and nationally and internationally. I know of your great personal work, and I want to thank you. And I also want to wish everybody well at the Jewish New Year. And this is a time of hope, and it's a time when we think again about what we can do to make for a better world. And I think I always start from imagining what the world could be. It could be fairer, it could be more sustainable, it could be more prosperous, particularly for those people who are in difficulty. We need not have refugees and asylum seekers in such difficulty. And we need not have, for example, 260 million children not able to go to school, even although they're school age. And then you think, what is the state of the world and what we need to do about it? And I feel from the history I've read and from my own experience in life, that all the great causes of the world and all the social progress that I have seen and I have studied has come from people with the strongest of moral principles and ethical foundations. And that means when it came to the removal of slavery, but right up to the Make Poverty History movement a few years ago, it was faith groups, churches, synagogues, people of all religions, and people with great ethical principles that led the way to try to awaken the world to the need for action. And so what gives me hope is that there are so many people with faith and so many people who want to see changes in the world and who want to make a better place. And I'm reminded of the story of Martin Luther King when he was addressing the great rally on civil rights in America in the 1960s. And he was giving what people thought was a pretty matter-of-fact speech, when suddenly one of the people on the stage, Matilda Jackson, shouted out to Martin Luther King as he was speaking, "Tell them about the dream, Martin, tell them about the dream." And suddenly Martin Luther King started talking about his dream of a better world, of how things could be, about how you could make, as Nelson Mandela said, we've got to make the impossible possible. And that changed the whole atmosphere. And this is a speech that is remembered throughout and will be remembered throughout history for the inspiration it gave to people to do great things. So hope, in my view, is built on showing people that things can be different and showing people that change can be brought about, and then showing by your actions that you're not just talking about it, but you're prepared to sacrifice to be able to deliver that. And of course, we're talking about freedom from hunger because we're about to face a huge famine, freedom from poverty and want, because even in this country, we've got an energy crisis that's going to put millions of people further into poverty. And of course, we've got an inflation crisis, depreciating currencies, debt rising in the poorest countries of the world. And we need an internationally coordinated action to do something. And that needs, I may say, a moral effort, because George Orwell wrote about nationalism in the 1940s. And he said nationalism is an us versus them ideology. It pits people against each other. It creates enemies and invents enemies where none exist. It breeds resentments that are imaginary rather than real. And he said the only way to counter nationalism and the resort to protectionism, isolationism, xenophobia that you yourself talked about is what he called a moral effort, that you have got to persuade people that this is not the right course of action. And while patriotism is a great thing because it's your love of your country and its traditions and its culture and everything about it, nationalism is an ideology which poses us against them, insiders against outsiders, foreigners against people who are nationals, and that is not the way to make for a better world. And so everything points to this, that the great movements in history that have changed society have been built from people with the strongest of moral foundations. And that's the way that you overcome both the despair that people have the ideologies that breed division, and of course the challenges that are so big now. We've got multiple crises that need to be overcome, and that's what I'm writing about when I say 7 ways to change the world. 7 challenges that we've got to meet, from nuclear proliferation to climate change, that we have got to deliver on if we're going to have a better, more sustainable and fairer world.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gordon. I really appreciate that message. I shall take it to heart. I shall pass it to my community and to other communities involved in the environmental movement, so it will go as widely as possible. And it is really inspiring to hear you speak. Thank you for your time, and I wish you a good day. And if I can say Shana Tova, a happy new year to you, and all strength to you, all your work as well. Thank you very, very much for your time now.
By way of conclusion, thank you for what you do, but there is no stronger and more compassionate and more devoted to public service as a community than the Jewish community. And I have benefited myself from the advice that has been given. Rabbi Sachs used to say to me that a society is only strong when it cares for the weak. It's only rich when it cares for the poor. It's only invulnerable when it cares for the vulnerable. And I've never forgot these words, because we cannot live in comfort when there are so many people who are uncomfortable. We can't be at ease when there's so many millions of people ill at ease. We can't be contented when there's so much discontent. And so what the Jewish community has done in helping people in need, the whole of the country has got to do to help each other get through this crisis, and the whole of the world has somehow got to find a way to come together to be able to deal with the multiple emergencies that are causing so much distress in every part of the world. So thank you for the chance to speak to you.
Thank you very much indeed.